Trevor Lawrence lands a new deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's a 5-year deal for a total of $275 million, $142 million of which is fully guaranteed, a $55 million average annual value, which is the highest in the league, tied with Joe Burrow. Pat Mahomes is the only player with a higher total value on the contract, but as we know, that is a unique contract with some bells and whistles, and of course, that is a very unique player. Now look, I'm a grumpy old man, and I am at the stage in my life where even though I know it's going to happen with each successive new quarterback contract, I always say, that's not the best quarterback in the league. How could you give him that much money? And with Trevor Lawrence, there's the added complication that, look, he's had some really good stretches over the last couple years, ever since he left the vacuum that was the Urban Meyer experience in his rookie year. But on the sum total of it all, he's been an above-average quarterback, maybe slightly above average, certainly not a top-5 quarterback. And my initial response, as it usually is with all of these quarterbacks, is, well, if it doesn't work out, they're going to regret that. The problem is that if it doesn't work out, there's not necessarily a lot of appetizing alternatives. And I'm going to go over two things today. One is Trevor Lawrence, the player, and some of the excuses that you have to make if you want to see the upside in him. And I think some of them are valid excuses. Some of them, frankly, I don't think are all that valid. But there is certainly upside. I've seen firsthand some of his brilliant throws that he's made under pressure. But then there's also an economic side to it that I won't drown you in details, but when you look at it against the context of how important quarterbacks are and exactly how rare the good ones are, it comes into play. So first, Trevor Lawrence, the player. I'm going to play a clip from Greg Cosell on the Ross Tucker podcast, link below. And if you're a Jaguars fan, you've probably already seen this enough times to make you nauseous. So just skip forward 31 seconds. But this is Greg Cosell talking about where he sees Trevor Lawrence right now. And he said this a couple weeks ago before this contract was announced.
He has a good arm, but he's not a power arm guy. His deep balls at times lose energy on the back end. When he has to move in the pocket and reset his platform, his arm strength kind of declines. There are times he can drive the ball with velocity, but for the most part, he's really kind of more of a touch and pace thrower. And I think he showed a tendency last year, and again, he has to work through this to play a little fast from the pocket when he perceived and felt pressure. He just sped up his process, and he's got to get better at that. I think he's at the top tier of kind of the for want of a better word, system quarterbacks.
Oh, he said the S word, system quarterback. This is where I agree with Greg Cosell in terms of where Trevor Lawrence's current issues are. I do see more upside in him because a lot of it is based on a couple things. One is that the way he moves in the pocket is a learnable trait, but you got to have a good offensive line. I also think there are many great quarterbacks who have had some of those same deficiencies that Greg is talking about, but you've got to really accentuate the timing and the rhythm side of it. If we were to go over excuses that people have made for Trevor Lawrence, I think that, look, the Urban Meyer morass is a good one. The offensive line has been an issue, and look, I'll go all the way back to my experience with David Carr. I do think that early in your career, if you don't get that support from your offensive line, there's a risk of it permanently damaging exactly how you respond to pressure. So that's a big unknown, but I do think that there is a lot of upside there by getting him some competent O-line help. And we're going to take a look at that element, but that also there's other things at play. A couple more items after these clips to talk about. JT O'Sullivan from the QB School, which is an awesome resource. A former NFL quarterback who has a very successful YouTube channel now. And he went over a couple of plays in a long 40-minute breakdown, link below, but that are not the more spectacular plays, but I think that kind of encapsulate a lot of the conversation. And in this first one, we're going to see A, the pass protection breakdown, but then B, Trevor Lawrence under duress, moving away from trouble and throwing a really nice pass.
This guy right here, somebody has to block him. Okay. I don't really care what the pass pro is. Someone's in the wrong here. We don't not block 3 techniques or 4 eyes. Then watch Trevor run away. See him separate? And then again, I mean, look at this throw. I can't tell. Does the DB's hand go first? Either way, That splits the numbers. That's right on the chest, right between the zero. Hell yes.
And he makes plenty of plays like that. Now, you might be wondering, okay, well, hey, that throw looks like it could have also been picked off, because there is a little bit of that element with Trevor Lawrence where you say, all right, you like that he makes big-time throws. The PFF metric of big-time throws, I believe he led the league in them last year. But are you actually taking a chance with some of those big-time throws? And is that part of what made him the quarterback who turned the ball over more than anybody else in the NFL last year? I think some of that does boil down to not getting as much help from his wide receivers, or his wide receivers not running as precise a route or working as well in the scramble drill. JT O'Sullivan actually talked about that element on that specific play that we just watched.
My only thing is, at the top of this route right here, with this kind of separation, my expectation would be this angle or this angle. You would never want to take an angle that allows you to go sideways so much that the DB can undercut you and be the first to the ball. Just make sure we're coming back down to the quarterback. See him kind of fade up right there. So see Ridley on the 50, fade away, and the DB can undercut it.
So a couple things about that. One, I do put it on quarterbacks as they become veteran quarterbacks to be the wide receivers coach. I think Tom Brady was the best wide receivers coach who ever lived. I think that was one element of what allowed him to just be on an ESP basis with his wide receivers. But I do think also where it appears a lot of time like Trevor Lawrence is a one-read quarterback, and that, okay, once the first read's gone, he's gone. I think that some of that does boil down to he's not had good offensive line play, and that his receivers perhaps aren't always exactly where they're supposed to be, and things just break down. So he'll have some continuity with the offensive coordinator this year, and some of that next level stuff in terms of how the offensive operates just needs to get dialed in that much tighter. And then it is also, aside from getting better offensive line play, as they hopefully do that, if you're a Jaguars fan, the other part that goes along with the offensive line play is that if the offensive line play does improve, or if it doesn't, Lawrence has to really understand when he needs to move in the pocket and how much time he has when he is under duress. There's a lot of examples of plays like this.
When his feet are in sync with the base timed up, things come out really nice. When his feet come together like this right there, and you'll see it even more from the wide, both his feet are off the ground. This is not a place you want to be right here. That's not where you want to play quarterback. Nothing about that looks ready to go. As opposed to if you just kept this base and threw it with anticipation. You know 17's coming out of it, put it right on the E. End this play. Instead, he puts it on the scoreboard, almost takes out the poor security guard in the back.
And I know if you're watching that, you might be thinking, like, well, he had number 56 in the battle red bearing down on him. That's a good NFL pocket that he had right there, and with the timing of that play, there was no need for him to move up. When you watch him do it the right way and just stay put when he can stay put, yes, he's very, very good, like in this play.
And so it's all about just maintaining the integrity of that pocket, trying to stay in the center and get the ball out on time in rhythm. That is outstanding. And look at this ball placement. I mean, right, it goes off his hand. Now maybe it'd be a hell of a catch. Whew. I like my chances, though.
So when you look at the good that he's done, you can totally understand where the Jaguars might feel like, yeah, we see the upside. We've seen the stretches of really good play, and we just need to get more of that out of him more consistently. The one excuse that people will make for him that I'm less inclined to bite on is that he's had all these nagging injuries or constant injuries. Look, I've just always been of the mindset that NFL quarterbacks play really well when they are injured, and they're going to get injured. You look at a quarterback at the end of the year, he looks like the Michelin Man on a Monday morning with just ice packs over every joint on his body, and you got to figure out a way to get it done when you're injured. When you do have mechanical inconsistencies, or when you're a guy who's a longer, lankier guy like Trevor Lawrence who really needs to be dialed in mechanically, if you're not dialed in, those little injuries make something that might be a little bit wobbly and erratic. that much more wobbly and erratic. So this is one thing that you have to adopt with him if you're a Jaguars fan, I think, is that nagging injuries are not an issue for quarterbacks. It's not like he's so athletic that that's his calling card or anything. He needs to know how to do it from the pocket and do it more consistently. On the contract side of things, there's an old saying in economics where if there's a gold rush, you can either get rich digging for gold or you can get rich selling shovels to the prospectors. And if you apply that to an NFL context, okay, the gold rush would be winning a Super Bowl. That's the gold. The NFL owners are the prospectors, and the GMs, they're the prospectors. They're out there desperately digging for that gold, but they need a shovel. And the problem is there's only like 5 or 6 shovels, the shovels being the quarterback. So how much would you pay if you're desperate to get that gold? How much would you pay for a shovel if there's only 6 shovels? You might even pay a bunch of money for a shovel that looks kind of dodgy because, man, okay, I don't know, but I got to have a shovel. And that's what's happened in the NFL over these last several years. The quarterbacks are the shovels, except they're sentient shovels that can accept payment themselves. And if you just want to think about how rare it is to find a good shovel, since 2016, there have been 96 quarterbacks drafted. They are flying off the shelves these days. Only 6 of those quarterbacks have reached all-pro status for at least a single season. So it's really, really difficult to find these guys. And you're competing in a market where to even go out and get a garden trowel of a quarterback as opposed to a damn pointy shovel, you're going to give a guy like Derek Carr a $150 million 4-year contract. Or there's a team like the Giants that will pay Daniel Jones $160 million. And then there's obviously no guarantee that those garden trowels are going to work out. So if you spend right now and it doesn't work out, you're going to spend big anyway in the manner of first-round picks, compensation for a veteran, whatever it might be, and there's no guarantee that those are going to work out either. Read Deshaun Watson. So that is the marketplace. If it does work out, you'll very rapidly be at a point where that quarterback is underpaid. Like Joe Burrow already looks underpaid. Dak Prescott was underpaid, although he won't be very, very soon. It's not as simple as like, well, it's just a precedent and all these teams are just being sheep and following the precedent. Remember, you've got that franchise tag looming out there where right now the franchise tag for quarterbacks is $35 million, $34 million. Trevor Lawrence's new contract doesn't have a cap hit of $35 million until the 2027 season, at which point that will be a very big bargain compared to whatever the franchise tag is at that point. So the existence of the franchise tag and the simple gold rush atmosphere of how quarterbacks are so desperately needed, it makes these contracts make more sense. It's still a risk, still a gamble, as every single contract, whether it's a renegotiation or a free agent from another team, it's always a gamble. This is just, it's a much more reasonable gamble than it seems when you get the sticker shock of the contract. So for all of you grumpy old folks like myself out there, I'm not telling you got to love it, but if you're a Jaguars fan or otherwise, it does make sense. I'm Seth Payne, played 10 years in the NFL, 5 years for the Jaguars, 5 years for the Houston Texans. I'm an expansion team specialist. But if you like this YouTube channel, please like, subscribe, tell a friend, and everybody have an awesome week.